Hey, everybody, it's Mike Belcito, co-founder of Product Collective, and we're back for another industry interview. I hope wherever in the world you are, I hope you're doing well. I'm coming at you from Cleveland, Ohio, pretty much as always. And Cleveland, as you can imagine in the wintertime, it's cold and blustery here, but I actually think it's supposed to be like in the 50s by Christmas time. So you never know what you're going to get here. But I hope wherever you are, it's either the winter wonderland that you want, or maybe it's nice and sunny. Whatever your flavor. I hope things are going well on your end. And yeah, this is like the last industry interview of 2023, right before Christmas, right before New Year's. So I appreciate those of you that are joining us for this. If this is your first time with joining us for an industry interview, I'm going to give you a little bit of a lay of the land. These are a production of Product Collective. Now, at Product Collective, we're a community for product managers and product leaders working in technology companies. And we've been at this for quite some time. I think it's 2015 when we first started Product Collective. And it's been a lot of fun for us. A lot of people know us for our conferences. We have 3 in-person conferences throughout the year with Industry, the product conference that takes place in the fall. The European edition of Industry, the product conference that takes place in the summertime. But then our first conference of 2024 is the New York Product Conference, and that is on April 18th. So we have a special going on. Anybody that's buying a ticket to any of our conferences in 2024 before the new year, you can actually get pricing for it's 40% off the main conference pass, which is the basic pass. And all levels of our passes are discounted pretty heavily. But yeah, I mean, if you want to save literally hundreds of dollars, best time to buy a pass to the conference is now. So you could go to industryconference.com and learn more about it, the upcoming conferences coming up. But at Product Collective, we do lots of things year round to just kind of further the field of product management, whether it be conversations like this with product leaders from all around the world, whether it be the podcast I co-host, rocketship.fm, or our newsletter at Product Collective. So if you're not signed up for any of that, you could go to productcollective.com and sign up. And when you do that, you'll see it says community at the top. You could click that and join our member hub. It's free to do that. We have over 100 hours of on-demand content from past conferences, past video chats, plus ways to keep you connected with the rest of our community. So all that's free. Go to productcollective.com to learn more about that. But these industry interviews, again, this is our way of linking up with product leaders from all over the world, diving in on all sorts of topics. And we had a theme for December being AI. I'm sure we're going to talk about AI a lot in 2024 as well. But we had a great chat with Rami Al-Hamad that was earlier this month that my partner Paul McAvinci had moderated on practical applications of AI for product managers. Today, we're going to be navigating the AI era. What does it mean when we're trying to make ethical considerations for AI in product management? And to dig through that with us, I have John Haggerty, and John is a product leader that has been involved in the product community for, well, at least with Product Collective for years, literally, been to our conference many times, has helped with sessions at our conferences, is one of the instructors at Gigantic, which we, in collaboration with Gigantic, we offer product management training. You go to training.productcollective.com, and John's one of the instructors for that. So, John, it's awesome to have you here with us for this. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Of course.
We're going to dig into ethical considerations. By the way, for those of you that want to participate, 2 ways to do that. At the bottom, you'll notice a chat and a Q&A. The chat, that maybe there's something that comes up in the conversation you want to add an anecdote to, share it right in the chat. Just make sure that when you do, it says hosts and panelists, change that to everyone so everybody can see. And maybe right now you could kind of get started. You could share where you're tuning in from. I mentioned earlier I'm tuning in from Cleveland, but you could share in the chat where you're tuning in from, and just kind of cool to see people coming in from all over. If you have a question for John at any time, you could submit it in the Q&A. There's a Q&A section at the bottom as well, and I'll be monitoring that throughout. So I want to get to as many of your questions as possible. But yeah, John, it's awesome to have you with us here again to talk through some of the ethical considerations of AI and product management and what we should know as product managers and product leaders. I guess maybe to get things started, we're saying AI, some people might be thinking different things. Some people, their mind might immediately go to ChatGPT. Some people might be thinking, oh, I'm thinking more artificial general intelligence. I heard OpenAI is making some developments on that. When we talk about AI, what do we mean by that? What's your take on that?
So AI is extremely broad, but also very specific when you get into those individual solutions. I guess I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. And I do not think AI is confined to a single scientific or engineering domain. It really merges those principles that come from computer science and mathematics and neuroscience, cognitive psychology, linguistics, operational research, economics, and there's many more. But at its core, AI is this quest to understand the very nature of intelligence, how our minds work. It seeks to really answer those profound questions about cognition, consciousness, and the very mechanics of our mind. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the theoretical side of things. It goes into the engineering side and the building of things. And this is where we take those understandings, those learnings, the theoretical side, and turn it into tangible systems, tools, and yes, products. And that's where product managers come into play. So I really want to think of it when we think of this big picture of AI, think of it as a universe. There's different galaxies within that universe. One of those galaxies could be machine learning. Inside that galaxy itself, there is different solar systems. One of those solar systems is deep learning. And you have things like LLMs within that deep learning. They could be a planet in there. They could be their own solar system as well within that galaxy. Depends on how you want to think about it. But think of the AI big picture, and then we start getting smaller and smaller. We get into more specific ideas and solutions within there.
Well, it feels like now for some, they've been working in AI for years already, but for much of the world, it feels like AI really has, at least in the public's eye, sprang in action this past year. I'm curious as we think about 2024 and beyond, what does it mean for product managers? And I'm curious, especially on the ethical implications. Like, what do you feel like AI is doing for, is it reshaping the role of a product manager and how we have to think about our products? What's your take on that?
Okay, for two things there, Mike. One, yes, AI, recent advancements. We're hearing a lot of it. It's in the news. It's all the rage right now. Is it a passing fad? Probably not, in my opinion. It really could be seen as what Web3 should have been and where we could go with that side of things and the change there. But also it's been around since the 1950s. And so it has this long history and this foundation it's built upon. How is it changing the role of product management? Well, to me, and what I believe and what I think is it's going to take us to the extreme of some of the core teachings of really influential product thinkers out there. When we talk about looking at the outcomes versus outputs, well, when you have non-deterministic AI tools out there, how can you focus on an outcome when you don't know what the outcome is when you start to build it? It gets us away from requirements and focusing more on the problems we're trying to solve, the data we have. What can it tell us? What can we do? What can we deliver for the end user versus a feature factory and building certain features that fit requirements for stakeholders?
Yeah. And how do you think it plays a role in the ethical considerations we have to make? What are some of those ethical challenges that we're seeing AI present to us? Because I mean, there's some across the board, right? With product management, there's probably some specific ones. You see it in the world of content marketing already. You see it in other places as well. So I'm curious about that.
So I see three main ones here. First one you brought up there, it is the data side of it. It's the how did you get the data? Where did it come from? Where did you acquire it? The data is the foundation of all AI solutions, no matter what you're building, how you're building it, if it's a neural network, if it's a CNN or an RNN, whatever it is that you're building, the data becomes the foundational aspect of it. Where did you get it? How did you acquire it? what's the privacy around it? What was the consent around it? What was the knowledge side of it? That is something huge. Making sure it complies with GDPR, CCPA, all those kind of regulatory side of things, absolutely 100%. But just informing the user where you gathered it from. You talk about some of the we talk about some of the generative AI. We look at where did they get, I'm thinking like Midjourney, others like that for Dolly, whatever, for generating images. Where did they get their data source to train the model for creating images? Was it publicly available? Was it did they compensate the artist who created the original one? Was it just, were they pulling from the public domain to create those? I created an image just as a joke of, I wanted to see the Mona Lisa as if it was painted by Van Gogh. What would that look like? To me, that's public domain. That's great. Use the combination of those two artists to match something up. But when you see other results where, I think Getty Images was creating a lawsuit because there was generative AI that was creating things that had the Getty image watermark on them. Well, clearly they were pulling from their library of content. And now what's the ethical side of how you came about with that information? So that's one side of it. The other part is understanding how the AI system works. And yes, they can become black boxes. But what are the inputs going into there? What are the algorithms that you're running? Why are they running those? What's important? And being able to have some understanding of why the solution, even if it's non-deterministic, was what came out of it. And be able to talk through that and have that understood. You don't need to give away the shop. You don't need to be able to give away your IP, your trade secrets and things like that, but being able to talk about what's inside that black box and what's happening, and actually understanding it is key. And so that's the second side, is really knowing the system. And the third one comes into the technical complexities of this. And I'm going to quote Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park here. And this is where, the question of could versus should, what did he say? Your scientists were so preoccupied of whether or not they could, they never stopped to ask if they should. And that's the third part of the consideration here, is as we move and we go further and further down the path, is really looking at the could versus should. Yes, we can do this, but should we? Is it the right path to go down? Especially when we get into general AI and the concerns there that could exist.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. There's so many companies now, they're feeling like they have to have an AI strategy, and maybe they do, but it's like asking, first of all, wait a minute, should we be integrating this right now? Which has ethical implications, but also even just like customer discovery implications. Is this actually helping the product in the first place anyways? Which company to company, product to product, that it might be a different answer. But I like thinking on that. I guess along those lines, if we are, as product people, starting to incorporate AI into our products, things like user trust, I feel like that's a really big deal. How do we, I say not everybody necessarily trusts AI quite yet, in terms of, well, where's the data coming from? Is this data leading me in the right direction? Definitely have plenty of cases where, you might ask ChatGPT as an example for something, and it gives you a very confident answer, might not be the right answer sometimes. So how can we better sort of build and maintain user trust when we're building AI into our products? What are the things that we should be thinking about along those lines? What should we be doing?
First and foremost, it's informed consent by the user. And that goes into the data that's being collected and data that's being used behind the model. Where did you get your data? How are you still acquiring your data? And making sure that they're aware and they're consenting to it. That informed consent goes a long way to building trust. The second piece is being able to explain. Some people might hate me for saying this, but at its very, very core, it's fancy math. It's probabilities. It's the making determinations based off of really complicated mathematical calculations. That's ends up being what, what's at the core there. It's almost getting in the neighborhood of quantum mechanics and probabilities there to get to that point, but it's math. Well, you can explain that in basic terms. There's baby books out there for quantum mechanics. I've seen those. So, going the same route with, how do you explain it in simple terms without giving away the shop, without giving away your trade secrets, without making that, without allowing bad actors to know how they could usurp the system or break it, but being able to give enough information so people can understand why it's doing it, and really understanding that why, which is so important for product managers. That should be your first question anyways. But those two things create that foundation of trust that can then move forward.
Yeah. What about, and this is this should be a top of mind topic for us all the time anyway, but bias, right? And like a lot of times, we've talked about here at Product Collective, within the product world before AI, there's bias in product building, right? Whether it's intended, usually it's unintended, but you have that bias that could be seeping into the process. How do we try to account for that, or can we even account for that when it comes to the AI systems we're using? Might bias be built into the AI systems that we might be using or developing for our products or into our products? And how do we think about that now? Like, is it any different than how we were thinking about bias in product decisions before? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
No, absolutely. So two things. One is the goal of AI is to mimic human cognitive function. That's what the goal is. Part of human cognitive function is bias and heuristics. That's built in there. There are bias and heuristics are going to exist in any AI system. Point blank, they're going to be there. What do you do with them? Are you using a diverse data set? Are you regularly doing system audits? Are you using an inclusive team structure to be able to identify and address those? How do you track data shift as real life data gets incorporated in here? How do you weigh for underrepresented groups? What are you putting in place to help understand, track, and address those are the big things there. Because it's going to happen, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to pause here. We have audience questions coming in. So by the way, everybody, keep the questions coming in. I want to get to as many of your questions in the next, 12 minutes is what we've got. So time's already flying by. This question, maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but it's a great one. And I'm sure it's one that's on everybody's minds, which is, do you have any predictions on how AI could augment or maybe automate, product roles or product responsibilities that product managers or product leaders might have? What are your thoughts on that, John?
It's a really great question. It's funny that I'm laughing about the asking because it's literally a side project I'm working on right now. With Rami, who you had a couple weeks ago for an interview with Paul. But him and I, we've been teaching this course with Gigantic. Through that, we've gotten thinking about, well, how can we leverage AI for product managers themselves? And we're actually trying to build some custom tools ourselves and put them out there and see who's interested in it. The areas we think that it would be most impactful and where I see this going are on some of the repetitive tasks and the going the layers deeper to get that deeper thought that needs to take place. One of the ones I'm working on building right now, I think, is a competitive analysis tool. But you need to be able to feed in your information, what what the company, where's your starting point? What do you know about that? And then be able to identify, well, who are the competitors? Doing the research, pulling it together, and then being able to basically automating the research side of it for you to trust but verify, because then you need to dig into it, look at that information. Is it correct? Am I right? What are the assumptions here? The things I don't think that AI will be able to automate, will be able to leverage, is the product sense side of product management. And that goes into empathy, that goes into curiosity, that goes into learning agility, all those core soft skills that are needed to make great product managers and great product people. But what I think it can help with is research, understanding, looking at data and understanding it, looking for those things that a human might not be able to discern or detect. Identifying cohorts of users, identifying patterns of activities, being able to do things like change the UI to fit certain criteria. But I can make ideas around that, but an AI tool might be able to help me find them, recommend them. What are those patterns that are underlying there that I'm not seeing? I'm using it for like correlation analysis to be able to predict what is what's good onboarding look like for a user. Yeah, I can do those math on my own, and it could take me a few days, or I could feed it in through, a tool that'll help me do the calculations quicker, easier, more effective, and then I just go back and verify it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, when people ask me about, well, hey, how do you think AI can help you in your job? I'm like, well, it can be a very high level intern, and maybe in some cases it's a lot more than that. But I like, if I'm going to give a intern, maybe a grade intern, maybe a grad school level intern, if I might give them a task on researching something and giving me the data back, I might still need to cross reference it. I might still need to like fact check it a little bit, but I'm going to expect a pretty decent answer. And that's so far what I'm seeing. Now that's just with the like kind of AI that I get to interact with. Obviously, there's all different, like you mentioned before, there's a whole universe of AI that's out there, and a lot of it's going to be a lot more advanced than maybe what I get access to just with like say Chat GPT.
I would
So
say
I
that
like thinking about it like that.
the three key areas I would see it be most impactful. It's going to be operational efficiencies. Can I do my job quicker, easier, better? It's the work smarter, not harder side of things. It's the analysis and decision support. So we talked about the data there. And the third one is the communication, the collaboration. Help me write this better. This is what I want to do. Help me lay this out so someone else can understand it. Help me get these points across. It's the overcoming that blank page.
Yeah.
Or going a layer deep on it. What are the things we need to add there? Those are the key areas that I see it. I see the biggest impact coming the quickest. Other areas, strategy and planning could be in the future. Being able to pull together multiple data sources, your pattern, your company, things like that to make decisions. Ideation and innovation, more for tracking what's going on in the competitive landscape, what's happening there, and knowing where things might be going in those pattern side of things. And the last one I would see is like ethical and social responsibility side of things. Can we build tools to help with detecting biases and pointing out, heuristics within the AI itself that are saying there? The social responsibility side of things. How is this going to be? How will this AI impact societal norms and changes? What does that look like? And be able to predict and then plan for that in the future. I could see the tools there, but it's going to take a while to get to that point.
Yeah. Is there, we're talking about ethical considerations. Is there a version where AI actually helps us build more ethical products, right? Like, and so before we're, again, we might have biases in the work that we're putting in, but those biases might go unchecked. Is there some sort of way where AI actually helps us? We're talking about the challenges, but is there a way that actually helps us and makes it maybe a more equitable product? I don't know. I'm curious your thought there.
My thought is yes. The question is, how do we get there?
Yeah.
It's literally something I want to explore. Rami and I have been talking about it offline in some of our conversations is, can we build something here that looks at and points out where biases are coming into play? Because a lot of that will be determined at the data layer of how the data, looking at the patterns, looking at the understanding, what is that foundational aspect of it? How is it being used? What's the leveraging? What's it looking like? The big pattern stuff is going to come out, but it's that you almost look at the systematic patterns that could be in there and be able to detect those and make determinations after it's detected. But I think it's a detection side that they're almost thinking of it as like a diagnostic tool that a doctor would use to be able to run to look at a problem. Well, then how do you fix it afterwards? The doctor figures that out. But giving them the tool to diagnose the issue, I think is where there could be something in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, John's mentioned his collaboration with Rami a couple times here, and I just want to again call back. If you go to training.productcollective.com, you'll see John and Rami's course on AI for product managers. So there's a lot to dig into there. I'm also in my follow-up email. I'll share more information about that as well. But definitely, if you're interested in that topic, which you're here, so I bet that you are. It's definitely worth at least looking into. So I'm going to send more info on that, as well as I'm going to send a recording of the conversation we had with Rami a couple weeks back in the follow-up email, along with the recording of this conversation too. So you could always go back and refer back to it. So I just wanted to put that out there. John, a lot's changed in the last, call it year and a half or so as it relates to AI. When you look at the next year and a half, and especially as we're thinking about ethical considerations, specifically, do you have any, you're not a fortune, teller, I don't know, but predictions? Do you have any things that you see coming down the pipe that it looks like we're going in a certain direction? Maybe you could talk about what you see coming in the next year and a half, 2 years, whatever it might be.
It's a really good question, Mike. PMs are going to need to stay updated on these advancements. They're going to become fast and furious. Where we're actually going to go and what's going to be developed, I think is it's really hard to say because it's going to be so fast. I think the focus is going to be on predictive analytics and automated decision making. And those are the two areas to focus on. I think that is how things are developing right now. I think anyone who can get their hands onto and digging into the current technologies that exist, ChatGPT is a great example there. Start using it, start playing with it, just have fun with it. Try your hand at building your own GPT. I think that you will get insights into the future development of AI products and product management of AI tools together. The one thing I want to say here is it's important to start looking at and thinking about AI first versus AI as an add-on. And that's really important. I think that's a path that's going to become very important here in the future. And that's where AI becomes the core of the product versus something that's brought in and added onto the product.
Yeah. And that might be my final question. And you might cover it right there. That might be the answer. My final question to you, since we are coming towards the end of our time, was, given that we've talked a lot, sometimes it's that last thing that really sticks in your mind. So I was going to ask you, if you had one big takeaway from this conversation, what would you want it to be? Would it be exactly that, making AI be first as a part of ADA, or what would be your big takeaway from this conversation that you hope people have?
I would say that the big thing is AI. When you're thinking about AI, think of it as the core of your product. How can it become core? If that's what you're looking to focus on. But the core element of product management should be solving a user problem. And everything should come back to that. What is the problem? Stay in love with the problem. AI might be the right solution. It might not. Machine learning might be the right solution. And the LLM might be the right solution. It might not be. But staying in love with the problem, not in love with the solution, staying focused on that is going to be the key for going forward, no matter if it's AI or not.
Yeah. Well, John, this has been an awesome conversation. I know, by the way, if there's people that didn't get a chance to ask a question, or question comes up after the fact, best way to get a hold of you, I imagine, might be LinkedIn. Would that
LinkedIn.
be right?
Yep, best place to find me.
So you can look John up on LinkedIn. I'm also in the follow-up email I'm going to send, along with the recording of this session and the last conversation we had on AI. I'm going to link to John's LinkedIn so you could connect with them there, as well as share information on your course on Gigantic. I think that would be a great next step for people too. So John, I just so appreciate you being here with us and being a part of this conversation, leading it with us. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike, for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. I hope all of you have a great set of holidays coming up, and I will see you in 2024. All right. Bye, everybody.